Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching the Right to Be Heard Town Hall India debates. After prolonged labour, it's finally been announced that the 16th of May is when we will know who's been elected to power. We've got three crack debaters on our program this evening. Representing the Congress Party, Minister of State for Human Resource Development, Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Representing the BJP, Supreme Court Advocate, Meenakshi Lekhi. Representing the Aam Aadmi Party, the firebrand lawyer, Rahul Mehra. We've got an audience over here and all of them have these devices called the Insta trackpad where they'll be debating on the questions that we'll ask, whose answers they agree with the most. I want to explain the rules for this debate before we begin. There'll be three questions we'll be putting out. All of you will be speaking for 2 minutes each on those questions. You will then be allowed to counter what your opponents say. The audience will then be allowed to interject at the end of each of those questions. On this screen, you will see whether or not you've been able to win that motion. I want to take up the first question for our program this evening. Has the Congress done enough to deserve a third term in office? And Dr. Shashi Tharoor will begin this debate. Dr. Tharoor, your time starts now.
I believe the Congress indeed and the UPA have done even more than one might imagine because it's transformed the face of India in the last 10 years. What you've seen has been a dramatic revolution in accountability and transparency, starting with the Right to Information Act and going right up to the slew of bills that were pending in Parliament that weren't allowed to be passed. We've had a tremendous transformation of rural poverty with the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme and the fact that rural purchasing power has increased. Our farmers are getting more support. The rural areas are much more prosperous now than they used to be. We've had tremendous improvement in the kinds of entitlements of our people, including in particular the right to education, which has put children into school in places where they weren't. The Land Acquisition Act, which has ensured that people will get a fair price for their land when the nation's development takes priority over their ownership. We've got a whole number of things that have taken place that were not imagined 10 years ago. And with that, not only has India's face been changed, but the majority of Indians, perhaps not the majority in this room, but across India and the villages of India, are better off today than they were 10 years ago. That's why the Congress and the UPA deserve another term.
Okay, you've taken less than your 2 minutes. You've built on your welfare credentials, Meenakshi Lekhi, on whether the Congress government has done enough for the UPA to deserve a third term in office. Your time starts now.
The UPA has changed indeed the face of India, but after having a GDP of 8.4%, they brought it down to 4.25% if you take the last quarter in order. If you look at the allotments and other things, we've seen nothing but the scams in everything. Where the GDP and the country could have progressed, the country has not progressed where we could have. The security, whether it's internal or external, is at stake. And we all have seen what happened in the case of Sindhu Ratna to Sindhu Rakshak to everything else. How the army has gone against this government, how the naval chief had to resign, and how the third chief of the air staff, there is an FIR pending. So from Augusta Westland to the submarines, we've seen the scams and the wrongs which have happened on the security front. On economic front, whether it's food security or it's right to education, and one may try to take credit, but forgetting that it came from right to, it actually started as Freedom of Information Act, which was started by the BJP. And prior to that, 1996 and 97, it was the state of Goa which enacted this law and which had gone through further changes, apart from the fact that Supreme Court enactments, Supreme Court judgments brought out these changes, for which Congress party is taking credit. The manner in which the image of India has gone down globally, I think the credit surely lies with the UPA. So they have not only deserved not to win the third term, but they should be, India should be made UPA free actually. And today that process has begun, technically by announcement of elections, because the Election Commission has announced, and virtually the administration, whether it's the state or the center, goes in the hands of Election Commission. And when the administration goes to the Election Commission, that means UPA is already out, and UPA is out of its process in this election.
Okay, just when the buzzer went off, you will be able to connect some of her figures, but before that, Rahul Mehra, on whether the Congress has done enough to deserve a next term in office.
Well, Congress surely has given new dimension and new meaning to every other word. Corruption is not only 60 crores, what it was in 80s when in Beaufort's. It is now akin to 2 lakh plus 1,000 crores. You talk of transparency, it's zilch. The right to information, in fact, has been scuttled. CBI has been taken out of the right to information. Various other agencies, there are exemption clauses which are being added onto. Their commitment to governance is absolutely zero. They have created parallel structures. There's somebody else as a mute prime minister who's never been heard in this country. So they've given a new meaning to what prime minister stands for in this country. As far as the level of accountability is concerned, they have absolutely nothing. The scam started with CWG. It was after almost a year that everything was put in the back burner, and that is when Suresh Kalmadi, under media and public pressure, had to be taken out. There are various other scams like Adarsh, like 2G, Colgate. They have given a different dimension and meaning to what natural resources for the country stand for. It is not the country, it is the crony capitalism of UPA and Congress which has thrived. There have been more than 60,000 farmer suicides. I don't know what Mr. Shashi Tharoor talks about as far as upliftment of the villages and the farmers. They stand for everything which is negative in India. It will be good riddance. Thank God that the Election Commission has declared dates today, and thank God for small mercies that UPA and Congress, which has probably been the most corrupt regime that the Indians have had to tolerate over the last 5 years, there's going to be an end to it. And, this is a chance for every young voter, and there are more than 10 crore young voters which are going to join in. There's 81.4 million voters. I hope the largest democracy will stand up and will actually vote for transparency and accountability.
Dr. Tharoor wants to counter what Meenakshi said.
Well, I'd like to counter both of them, actually, but starting with Meenakshi, who went on about 4.2% growth. Her numbers are wrong. The NDA government actually never made it to 6, whereas the Congress party, the UPA government, from 2004-5 to 2011-12, actually took India up to over 8% growth, hitting 8.7% in a few years. It's only in the last 2-3 years during a global recession that we've seen a drop first to 6.5, then to 5, and finally to 4.7. So there is a fact that there has been a decline, but we're still doing better than most of the other economies around the world, which have equally been affected by the global recession. Second, it is somewhat ironic for me to hear lectures on corruption from the representative of a party whose government actually made money off the coffins of our martyrs in Kargil. I mean, to my mind, to hear security lectures on the people who sold our nation down the river in Kandahar and mismanaged the Kandahar hijacking is laughable. This is not, frankly, a serious alternative to the kind of responsible governance we've seen on security issues. As far as Rahul is concerned, they have had a one-track approach. The only issue they know about is corruption. Yes, there is corruption in this country. We're determined to tackle it, and we've joined hands with Anna Hazare in passing the Jan Lokpal bill in Parliament. The fact at the end of the day is that nobody, sadly, in this country has been blameless on the issue of corruption. We're doing something concrete about it. And it's our mechanisms and our governance systems and the kind of governance we've created in this country that have brought out some of these egregious charges that have since been exploited by the opposition. The fact is, when we point one finger at the corrupt, there are 3 fingers pointing back at us. And the truth is, our entire society needs to cleanse itself as far as corruption is
Meenakshi wants to respond.
Yes, on the issue of coffins, I will ask Dr. Tharoor to answer me the FIR number and the people who have got indicted, because for past 10 years, it's their government who has been in place. And if there was, in fact, anything what he's saying to be true, then some people should have been behind bars. I'll ask him if there is a commission of inquiry, FIR, any court case, anything that they have been constantly speaking about. So it's a myth which is being created, like many other myths of Nehru being great, Indira being great. Similarly, coffin scam, which does not exist except when people like Mr. Tharoor speak in public. So far as coming to the security issue and Kandahar, as Dr. Tharoor has spoken, 250 Aam Admis and the Bharatiya Janata could not have been allowed to be shot dead, as Mr. Tharoor would speak, and it was all-party meeting that happened that gave a go-ahead for the deal that was made to save those 250 Indians.
Rahul Mehra.
It's laughable when Mr. Tharoor, representing the Congress party, talks about having given Lokpal. Lokpal, for last more than 2.5 years, this is the principal party along with BJP, as in the opposition, who have stalled Lokpal under one garb or the other. And to claim now that Lokpal has been given by them to the country is a mockery of democracy in this country and people's right. Number two, when he talks about, yes, all I hear from BJP and Congress is, you both are corrupt. मेरी करप्शन तुम्हारी करप्शन से ज्यादा बेहतर है. Neither I am accountable nor are you, so so be it. We both are not transparent in our functioning, so be it. So all I hear, their economic policies are just the same. These are two sides of the same coin. That's what is absolutely clear.
Dr. Tharoor, you cited in your opening arguments the UPA's welfare credentials. All the doles and the handouts that you've given, are they enough to win the UPA another term in office? What about the complete lack of investor confidence? What about the fact that Indian industry is more comfortable investing abroad? They don't have faith in your government and your policies to stay back and continue working in India. What about the fact that from 58 million jobs being created earlier, we're now down to 15 million? People are entering into the workforce and not being able to find jobs. Is that not a serious disqualification when you seek another term in office?
No, because first of all, you can't simultaneously have us being accused of being in bed with the capitalists through crony capitalism, as one speaker here says, and you're saying the capitalists don't like us. The fact is, there may be something to be understood in the fact that the Congress party is the only party in the country that has both stood for growth and for its distribution, the distribution of the benefits of growth to include those who've been excluded in our society. The BJP, after their 6 years of rule, talked about India shining, without asking whom it was shining for. When we ruled, we said, as far as we're concerned, we want to ensure that it shines for those for whom India has not shone. We promoted growth. As I said, we had 8.7% growth till 2011-12, but we made sure the fruits of the revenues of that growth were distributed in these welfare schemes to the most unfortunate in our society. We believe that's the objective of governance, to ensure that the poorest in our society, the most unfortunate, the most excluded, are the ones who benefit from our policies. And that's where we're
Rahul Mehra.
It's so unfortunate that the growth that they talk about in the GDP terms is a jobless growth. There has been not even 0.01% increase in the jobs in India. What kind of growth are they talking about? There are aspirations of the young India. Young India doesn't care about these GDP figures. Young India only cares about what is going to happen once they step out of their colleges and schools, and are they employable, one, and if they are employable, are there jobs enough to employ them? Number two, they're talking about all sorts of things under the sun, that they are the ones who have given it to India. Unfortunately, what has happened in India is all they have given is parallel power structures to India, which are completely unaccountable, which are unconstitutional.
Meenakshi Lekhi.
Absolutely nothing.
Meenakshi.
5.5 crore jobs were created during 6 years of NDA regime. And when Mr. Mehra tried to equate BJP and Congress, I think it's most unfair. And it is the Aam Aadmi Party who's beneficiary in various formats from the Congress schemes.
Okay, it's time now for some audience interjections. We'll take the first question from Professor. Yeah. Go on, sir. Just 1 second, let the mic come to you.
My question relates to, the constant focus in the debates on transparency and growth, focus on growth and development. You see, what I'm trying to say is that in the last couple of years, the slowdown in the economy happened because of policy paralysis. And as a
because of global factors.
No,
not just the global factors.
So before our debaters get in, can he just complete his question? Then you'll have an
because my
opportunity to
contention
answer.
is that the slowdown was more on account of policy paralysis. Maybe as alleged, maybe on account of, you're saying CAG.
Okay, you're blaming policy paralysis, not global factors. Dr. Tharoor must explain.
Yeah.
No, we've never bought into this argument of policy paralysis. If there was policy paralysis, we would not simultaneously be accused of having unleashed too many welfare schemes on the nation. You can't have welfare schemes if you're not making policy effectively and rapidly. The truth is, the allegations of policy paralysis have been about our reluctance to grant certain decisions in favor of business interests who have had voices, sympathetic voices in the media. It's as simple as that. There is no policy paralysis. There is certainly a very heavy administrative system in our country that I, for one, would dearly like to see simplified and reduced. Some progress has been made in that direction. Our UPA has created a cabinet committee on investment that has expedited and fast-tracked a number of clearances. But the fact is that policies are being made every day, are being executed every day, and the proof is in the transformations I've talked about in my...
You mentioned that some states are doing better than others, but in all states which are doing better, Congress is not in the ruling thing. So, it's not to the credit
Kerala,
of Congress or UPA.
Okay, I think all debaters have made their opening points. I want you now to pull out your trackpads.
Kerala, very
So
good
you've
success.
made your arguments. Let them now decide. You've got a yes and you've got a no. I'll take the question once again. Has the Congress done enough to deserve a third term in office? This, of course, is an urban skew because you're all present in our fancy studios. We do build that in, but this is as random a sample as any. So just press either yes or no on the trackpads that you have on whether the UPA has done enough to deserve a third term in office? Have you all had an opportunity to press either yes or no? Okay. Can we have the results for the first question on our screen right now? We're trying to ensure we don't make this a personality-based debate. We keep it on the issues because it's the issues that really matter. Can we have the answers for the first question on whether the Congress has done enough? 71% Dr. Tharoor say no, 29% say yes. And if this were the opinion across the country as well, Dr. Tharoor and his party could be in for a tough time. But then we've got the next question.
This is a very unrepresentative sample.
Absolutely.
Look around you.
This is just in the form of a debate. It's worth only what this audience represents and no more. Of course, the Indian election, which will unfold over the next month and a half, is far, far more complicated.